The dim hum of the station's life support systems filled the air like a distant heartbeat, steady but weary after months of isolation. Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her brow, her gloved hands smudged with the residue of jury-rigged repairs. She was the last human engineer on Outpost Epsilon, a forgotten speck in the void orbiting Proxima Centauri b. Her team had dwindled to 3, herself, the cautious navigator Tomas Ruiz, and the wiry comms specialist Kira Novak, whose quick wit often masked the fear gnawing at them all. Elena straightened from the console in the central chamber, the one they called the Heart. Flickering holograms danced across the walls, mapping the station's failing power grid. "Grid's holding at 30%, she said, her voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "But the solar arrays are toast. Another flare from the star and we're blind." Tomas leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, eyes scanning the readouts with the precision of someone who'd navigated asteroid fields blindfolded. He was the steady one, always calculating odds, never one for rash moves. "We've got the emergency reserves. Ration them right, we buy time." "But comms to Earth? Kira, any luck pinging the relay?" Kira hunched over her panel, fingers flying across the interface, her dark hair tied back in a practical knot. She shot Tomas a wry glance. "Luck? In this tin can? The relay's ghosting us. Signals bouncing like they're allergic to our frequency. Earth's probably too busy with their own mess to notice." She paused, her expression tightening as a static burst crackled through the speakers. "Wait, something's coming in. Weak, but it's them." The chamber's lights dimmed for a heartbeat, then stabilized. Elena felt a knot loosen in her chest. Contact with home base meant options, maybe even evacuation. But as the message resolved, fragmented and laced with interference, her hope curdled. "Outpost Epsilon, status, critical. Solar minimum on Earth, global blackouts. No launches possible. You're on your own. Conserve power. Await further." The transmission cut off, leaving only the hum. Earth dimmed its light? Elena's mind reeled. The chamber's atmosphere recyclers whirred louder, as if straining against the news. Proxima's flares had been bad, but Earth's sun entering a grand minimum? That meant no resupply, no rescue fleets. Just them adrift. Tomas broke the silence first, his voice low and measured. "We adapt. Inventory the hydroponics, stretch the food. Power down non-essentials." Kira spun in her chair, eyes flashing. "Adapt? Tomas, we're not colonists, we're a pit stop. If Earth's dark, who's coming for us? We need a plan, not prayers." Elena nodded, forcing calm into her tone. She was the leader by default, the one who'd patched the station through worse. "She's right. First, we stabilize the core reactor. It's our lifeline. Tomas, you and I on the access tunnel. Kira, keep monitoring for any rebound signal." They moved with practiced efficiency, grabbing tools and suits. The corridor to the reactor bay stretched ahead, its emergency strips glowing faintly orange. As Elena sealed her helmet, she glanced back at the Heart, where the holograms now pulsed with warning icons. The chamber that once felt like a bastion now seemed to close in, shadows lengthening as power flickered once more. In the tunnel, the air grew cooler, metallic tang biting at their filters. Tomas clipped his harness to the rail, testing it with a tug. "Remember that drill on Luna? Lost pressure, had to improvise seals with spare plating. We got through." Elena managed a half-smile behind her visor. "Yeah, and I still owe you for that coffee you spilled in 0G. But humor faded as they reached the reactor door. Alarms blared softly, containment breach, minimal but rising. She initiated the manual override, the hatch grinding open on protesting hydraulics. Inside, the reactor thrummed erratically, coolant lines hissing steam. A panel sparked, and Elena lunged forward, her multi-tool already out. "Tomas, reroute the auxiliary feed, now." He complied, fingers steady on the valves, but a sudden jolt rocked the station. The floor bucked, throwing Elena against the console. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she gritted her teeth, yanking wires free. The external challenge hit them without warning. A micrometeorite swarm, debris from Proxima's unstable rings peppering the hull. Alarms wailed. "Hull breach in Sector 3. Kira's voice crackled over comms. "It's the observation deck," Air's venting. Elena's heart pounded. Sector 3 held their oxygen reserves. Lose that and the stakes turn lethal. Hold the line, Kira. We're coming back. As they scrambled to seal the reactor, the station groaned, a beast wounded in the dark. Earth's silence echoed in their suits, a reminder that ingenuity was all they had left. But one breach could end it all, and the swarm was just beginning. Ilara gripped the console's edge, her knuckles whitening against the dim glow of the emergency lights. The chamber's hum had faded to a sporadic whine, like a beast drawing its last breaths. She glanced at Jax, his broad shoulders hunched over the flickering diagnostic panel, sweat beading on his forehead despite the dropping temperature. "It's not the core," he muttered, voice steady but edged with frustration. "Power relays are intact, but something's bleeding the auxiliary cells dry." Mira paced the narrow walkway, her boots echoing softly against the grated floor. The youngest of them, she carried the weight of optimism like a shield, but even now her eyes darted to the viewport where stars blurred into streaks. "We reroute from the outer hull capacitors? That's what the manual said for cascade failures." Her words hung in the air, practical and unyielding, a trait honed from years scavenging derelict stations. Jax shook his head, not looking up. "Already tried. The surge fried the connectors. If we push it, we'll lose life support next." He slammed a fist lightly against the panel, the sound sharp in the confined space. The chamber, Earth's last diplomatic outpost on the fringe of the Orion Arm, had been their home for months, a beacon of human resolve amid alien negotiations. Now, with the lights dimming and comms silent, it felt like a tomb closing in. Ilara straightened, forcing calm into her limbs. Brave by necessity, she'd led salvage teams through worse. Asteroid fields that shredded hulls, pirate ambushes that left scars. Backup plan then? The probe drone in Bay 3, it's got independent solar arrays. We deploy it, siphon power back through the tether line. Her idea sparked from a half-remembered training sim, gritty ingenuity born of Earth's underdog spirit. Mira nodded, already moving toward the access hatch. "I'll suit up. Jax, you handle the link up?" But as she reached for her helmet, a low groan rippled through the deck plating. Alarms blared anew, red strobes painting their faces in bloodlight. The viewport shuddered, revealing the culprit, a rogue micrometeor swarm, invisible until now, pummeling the outer shielding. One fragment breached, a hairline crack spiderwebbing across the reinforced glass. Jax cursed under his breath, diving for the manual overrides. Evasive thrusters offline. We're sitting ducks. The first real cost hit then, a hiss of escaping atmosphere, faint but insistent, pulling at their sleeves like ghostly fingers. Ilara's plan teetered. The drone launch would have to wait, or they'd vent the chamber's air chasing shadows in the void. Mira froze mid-step, her optimism cracking just a fraction as the swarm's relentless tap turned to thunder. Elena gripped the edge of the control panel, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The dim emergency lights cast long shadows across the chamber's vast dome, turning the intricate alien etchings into mocking silhouettes. Marco was already elbow-deep in the wiring behind the central console, his flashlight beam dancing like a firefly in the gloom. "This isn't just a glitch," he muttered, voice echoing slightly off the curved walls. "The power core's bleeding out faster than a punctured suit. We've got maybe 2 hours before the whole system's dark." Lena hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes scanning the flickering readouts. She adjusted her glasses, a habit that betrayed her caution even in zero-G. "If we reroute the auxiliary feeds like you suggested, it might stabilize the environmental controls. But the schematics are incomplete. Those runes don't match any database we have." Her words were measured, each one weighing the risks, but Elena could see the tremor in her hand. They were 3 humans adrift in this relic of a long-dead civilization, and Earth's faint signal had winked out hours ago, leaving them truly alone. "Talk later, fix now," Elena said, her tone clipped as she hauled herself toward the access hatch. Brave didn't mean reckless, but waiting wasn't an option. The chamber's air recyclers hummed unevenly, a reminder that their suits' backups wouldn't hold forever. She pried the hatch open with a grunt, the seals hissing in protest. Inside, conduits snaked like veins, pulsing with the last dregs of energy. Marco followed, tools clinking against his belt. "Hand me the splicer," he called, and Elena passed it over, their gloved fingers brushing in a moment of silent solidarity. They worked in tandem, Marco splicing wires while Elena held the light steady. Sweat beaded on her forehead despite the chill. The suit's cooling systems were straining. "Almost there," Marco breathed, twisting the final connection. A spark jumped, and for a heartbeat the lights brightened. Relief washed over them. But then, a low groan reverberated through the chamber, like the structure itself was awakening in anger. Alarms blared, red strobes flashing. The readouts on Lena's tablet spiked. Overload in the secondary grid. "Back off!" Elena shouted, yanking Marco away just as a burst of plasma arced from the console. It scorched the wall, leaving a blackened scar that smoked in the recycled air. They tumbled into the open space, hearts pounding. Lena rushed over, helping Marco to his feet. "The reroute?" It feedback looped into the core stabilizers. "We're accelerating the shutdown." Marco rubbed his helmet, wincing. "Clever plan, my ass. That alien tech's got safeguards we didn't see coming. It's like the chamber's fighting us." He forced a wry grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. Elena floated there, staring at the damaged panel. The initial plan had been straightforward. Tap into the chamber's ancient power to boost their signal back to Earth. Now, with the core destabilizing, the darkness wasn't just coming, it was hungry, threatening to swallow their air, their heat, their hope. Lena tapped her tablet furiously. "We can't force it. Maybe we isolate the environmental section, by time to jury-rig something else." Her voice held an edge of desperation, the cautious scientist yielding to necessity. Elena nodded, pushing off toward the far wall where the air vents clustered. "Marco, you're with me. Lena, monitor from here, keep an eye on that core temp." As they moved, the chamber seemed to press in, the etchings whispering secrets in the stuttering light. Outside, through the viewport, the moon's barren surface stretched endlessly, Earth's dimmed star a cruel tease on the horizon. They reached the vents, Elena securing herself with a magnetic boot. Marco unpacked a makeshift sealant, a blend of their 3D printed patches and scavenged alien alloy. "This'll hold the pressure, but it's duct tape on a black hole," he quipped, though his hands shook. Elena sealed the first junction, the hiss of escaping air muffled by her suit. One by one they patched the leaks, but each fix drained more from the failing systems. A distant rumble shook the floor, another cascade failure. By the time they returned to Lena, the air tasted thinner, even through the filters. "Core's at critical," Lena reported, her face pale under the helmet light. "We stabilized the vents, but the signal boosters fried. No calling home until we rethink this." Elena leaned against the console, the weight of command settling heavier. The chamber had tested them, and their first swing had glanced off. But humans didn't quit, they adapted. "Then we dig deeper," she said, eyes scanning the shadows for the next clue. "Find what this place really wants." The darkness lingered, but so did their resolve, flickering like the last defiant lights. Elena gripped the railing as the maintenance pod shuddered through the void, the stars outside the viewport streaking like distant fireflies caught in a gale. Her gloved hands ached from the strain, but she didn't loosen her hold. Beside her, Marcus hunched over the control panel, his face illuminated by the faint glow of emergency lights. Sweat beaded on his forehead, catching the red hue from the alarm indicators. "Power conduits are fried all the way to Sector 7, Marcus muttered, his voice crackling through the suit comms. He was the cautious one, always double-checking schematics before a weld, but now his fingers flew across the keys with uncharacteristic speed. "If we don't reroute from the auxiliary grid, the whole chamber's gonna go dark for good. Life support's already flickering." Elena nodded, though he couldn't see it through her helmet. She was the brave sort, or reckless depending on who you asked, diving into hull breaches without a second thought. Then we pushed the pod closer. "Manual override on the outer hatch. I've got the toolkit." The pod lurched as another pulse from the solar storm hit, the electromagnetic interference making the controls whine. Back on the station, Captain Reyes had argued against this. "Too risky," she'd said, her dark eyes sharp under the command deck's harsh lights. Reyes was the steady anchor, the one who weighed every option like it was a life-or-death ballot. But, with Earth comms dimmed, cut off by the same storm that had crippled their systems, they couldn't wait for protocols. The chamber, that vast habitat module housing the hydroponics and crew quarters, was their lifeline. If it fell, so did they. Elena unstrapped and floated toward the airlock, the pod's artificial gravity disengaged for the approach. She clipped her tether to the wall, heart pounding in rhythm with the distant hum of failing engines. Marcus, give me 30 seconds to seal the breach. Then flood the line. Copy that. His reply was tight, laced with the wit he usually saved for debriefs. Just don't turn this into one of your hero stories. I hate sequels. She snorted, cycling the airlock. The outer door hissed open to the black expanse, the station's silhouette looming like a wounded beast against the storm's auroral haze. The chamber's hull gleamed dully, pocked with scorch marks from the flare's fury. Elena propelled herself out, mag boots clamping to the metal with a satisfying thunk. The toolkit hovered at her waist, magnets holding it steady. Zero-G made every movement deliberate, a dance with inertia. She reached the access panel, fingers numb despite the suit's heaters. The storm's radiation ticked against her visor, a Geiger counter's whisper urging haste. Pry bar in hand, she wedged it under the panel's edge. It resisted, warped by heat, but she levered harder, muscles straining. A spark jumped as the panel gave way, exposing the tangle of conduits, blackened, smoking in the vacuum. Elena's breath fogged her helmet briefly. The main line was severed, a clean cut from the overload. She pulled the splice kit free, feeding the insulated wire through the repair sleeve. Her hands shook, not from cold but the knowledge that one slip meant cascade failure. Oxygen recyclers offline, crops withering, the crew suffocating in the dark. Almost there, she transmitted, voice steady. Marcus, prep the surge protector. Affirm. But readings are spiking. Storms intensifying. The pod jolted behind her, a metallic groan echoing through her boots. Elena whipped around, eyes widening at the sight. A chunk of debris hurled by the storm's magnetic whip, slamming into the pod's flank. Sparks erupted and Marcus's comm cut to static. Marcus. No response. The tether yanked her back as the pod spun lazily, drifting off course. She reeled herself in, heart slamming. The chamber's lights dimmed further below, emergency reds pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Kicking off, Elena chased the pod, mag boots firing in bursts to close the gap. The storm's glow bathed everything in eerie crimson, turning the station into a shadowed relic. She caught the edge of the pod's hatch, hauling herself aboard just as another tremor shook the frame. Inside, Marcus floated limp against the console, a gash across his helmet from flying shrapnel. Blood floated in crimson globules, but his chest rose and fell, alive barely. Elena sealed the inner door, repressurizing with a whoosh. She dragged him to the medkit, slapping a sealant patch over the crack. Hang on, you idiot. We're not done yet. The console flickered back to life, auxiliary power kicking in sporadically. But the reading screamed bad news. The reroute had partially engaged, buying minutes, not hours. The chamber's core was destabilizing, gravity fields warping under the strain. If they didn't stabilize it manually from inside, the whole module would shear off. Elena strapped Marcus into the co-pilot seat, his eyes fluttering open. What happened? Debris tango. Your plan worked halfway. Now we improvise. She fired the pod's thrusters, aligning for the chamber's emergency ingress. The station grew larger in the viewport, a behemoth adrift in the storm's embrace. Reyes's voice broke through the static on the main channel. Pod 2 report. Elena? Marcus. We're in one piece, Captain, Elena replied, voice raw. But the chamber's on borrowed time. We're going in hot. A pause, then Reyes's tone firm as ever. Understood. Docking bays prepped. But the storm's peaking, entry windows closing fast. Elena glanced at Marcus, who managed a weak. Elena gripped the railing as the habitat module shuddered again, the dim emergency lights flickering like dying fireflies. Marco was already at the control panel, his fingers dancing over the exposed wiring, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill seeping through the bulkheads. Come on, you stubborn beast, he muttered, voice laced with that familiar sarcasm that kept them all from cracking. Lila hovered nearby, her tablet clutched like a shield, eyes scanning readouts that painted a grim picture. Oxygen levels dipping, hull integrity holding by threads. The blackout had hit hours ago, right after the solar storm peaked, frying the primary grid and leaving their corner of the station in limbo. Earth, visible through the cracked viewport, hung like a bruised marble, its lights dimmed by the same cosmic tantrum that had silenced half the orbital network. No distress calls getting through, no rescue on the horizon. Just them, 3 humans against the void's slow squeeze. Marco reroute from the auxiliary batteries yet? Elena asked, keeping her tone steady, though her knuckles whitened on the rail. She could feel the pull of fatigue, the way each breath came a fraction shallower. He didn't look up. Trying. But the storm's EMP echoes are still scrambling the relays. It's like the system's got a grudge. A spark jumped from the panel and he jerked back, cursing under his breath. There, gotta trickle. Enough for the fans, maybe. Lila stepped closer, her caution showing in the deliberate way she moved, avoiding the scattered tools on the deck. It's not enough. Projections show CO2 buildup in 20 minutes if we don't seal off the east wing. And with the docking clamps failed. She trailed off, glancing at Elena. They all knew what that meant. The supply pod from the lunar relay was drifting, untethered, a ghost in the black. Elena nodded, pushing off the rail. Her leg ached from the earlier evacuation scramble, but she ignored it, striding to the comms station. Static hissed back at her attempts to hail the core module, where the rest of the crew, or what was left, fought their own battles. We can't wait for them. Marco sealed the bulkhead to the east. Lila, help me jury-rig the oxygen scrubbers with the spare filters from storage. Marco shot her a grin, half feral in the low light. Bossing us around already? Thought you'd buy me dinner first. But he was moving, grabbing the manual override lever, muscles straining as the hatch groaned shut with a finality that echoed in the confined space. As the air recyclers whirred to life on borrowed power, Elena caught Lila's eye. The scientist's face was pale, but there was a spark there, the same grit that had gotten them through the initial impact. Outside, the stars wheeled indifferently, Earth's faint glow a reminder of what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but the spark of home that no storm could fully extinguish. The module stabilized for a moment, the hum of makeshift systems a fragile lullaby. But then the deck tilted subtly, a warning from the station's failing gyros. Elena's mind raced. If they couldn't stabilize rotation, centrifugal gravity would falter, and with it, their grip on normalcy. Options? She said, voice cutting through the tension. Lila tapped her tablet furiously. We could vent the east wing's Atmo to buy time, equalize pressure manually. But it'd mean losing any chance of salvage there. Tools mets. Marco wiped his hands on his jumpsuit. Or I hotwire the thrusters from the emergency pod. Risky as hell, could spin us right into the debris field. Elena waited, the cost etching lines on her face. Venting meant cutting off a piece of their world. Thrusters meant gambling everything on one clever hack. The station creaked again, a deep groan from the bones of the structure. Time was bleeding away. Thrusters, she decided, the word heavy. We're not amputating hope yet. Marco, you're on it. Lila, plot the safest burn vector. Keep us clear of Earth's shadow. They moved as one, a quiet rhythm born of shared desperation. Marco cracked open the access hatch to the pod bay, the cold vacuum nipping at their suits as they tethered in. Lila's voice crackled over the intercom, feeding coordinates, her caution tempering the wild edge of the plan. Elena anchored herself at the oversight console, watching the readouts climb, power surging, gyros whining back to responsiveness. A jolt rocked them as the thrusters fired, uneven at first, the station lurching like a beast shaking off sleep. Debris pinged off the hull, close calls that made Elena's heart hammer. But the spin steadied, gravity settling into a reassuring pull. For now. Marco floated back, helmet off, his wit undimmed. See? Humans, 1 part duct tape, 2 parts sheer bloody-mindedness. He clapped Elena on the shoulder, but his eyes flicked to the viewport, where Earth's dimmed continents blurred below. Lila sealed the connection, exhaling slowly. It's holding. But the storm's tail is still whipping, another pulse could undo it all. Elena stared at the planet, its lights flickering like a heartbeat weakening. The chamber had fallen to darkness, but they hadn't. Not yet. The real test loomed, bridging to the core, finding the others before the void claimed its due. She straightened, resolve hardening. Then we push on. Suit up, we're crossing the void tube to the next module at dawn cycle. Jax wiped the sweat from his brow, the dim emergency lights casting long shadows across the chamber's consoles. The air hummed with the low growl of failing generators, and every few seconds, a spark jumped from the exposed wiring behind the main panel. Elena crouched beside him, her gloved hands steady as she held the makeshift clamp in place. "This bypass should hold for another hour," she said, her voice tight but even. "Myra's counting on us to get the secondary power online before the core overheats." He nodded, twisting the final connection with a pair of pliers scavenged from the toolkit. The metal bit into his palm, but he ignored the sting. Humans didn't quit when the stars themselves seemed to conspire against them. Back on the Odyssey they'd trained for blackouts, but nothing like this. The chamber's ancient alien tech resisting every protocol, as if the structure itself resented their intrusion. Earth's signal had flickered out hours ago, leaving them isolated in this forsaken outpost on the edge of the nebula. No resupply, no evac. Just the four of them. Elena's unyielding resolve, Myra's precision, his own knack for jury-rigging disasters, and poor Tomas, stuck topside rerouting the vents. A sharp crackle erupted from the panel, and the lights dipped again. Jax cursed under his breath, yanking back as a surge arced toward his fingers. Elena pulled him away, her grip firm on his shoulder. "Easy. We can't afford a fried engineer." She scanned the readouts, the holographic display flickering like a dying firefly. Temperatures in the core chamber were climbing, red warnings pulsing across the interface. Their first plan, flooding the system with the auxiliary coolant from the habitat module, had backfired spectacularly. The alien alloys didn't take to water-based solutions. It had corroded a junction, worsening the leak. Now vapor hissed from the seams, carrying the acrid scent of melting insulation. "Jax, talk to me," Elena pressed, her eyes reflecting the glow of the console. Brave as she was, he saw the strain-etching lines around her mouth. They'd lost contact with Tomas during the surge, his comms cutting out mid-sentence. Was he trapped in the upper levels, oxygen thinning as the darkness spread? He straightened, forcing a grin despite the knot in his gut. "All right, Captain. Plan B. We siphon the heat exchangers from the envirosuits. It's risky, could leave us without temp control, but it'll buy Mira time to recalibrate the flux regulator." He gestured to the suits hanging on the rack, their visors fogged from disuse. The idea had hit him during the blackout, piecing together scraps of Xenotech manuals they downloaded before Earth's beacon dimmed. No guarantees, but sitting idle meant suffocation for all. Elena hesitated, glancing toward the sealed door leading to Myra's lab. The scientist had been elbow-deep in the chamber's neural net, trying to coax the ancient AI back online. If anyone could bridge the gap between human stubbornness and alien whims, it was her. "Do it," Elena decided, her jaw set. "But we move fast. Tomas won't last long up there without air." Jax set to work, stripping the hoses from his suit with quick, practiced motions. The chamber's walls seemed to close in, the darkness beyond the lights a living thing, whispering of failures yet to come. One wrong cut, and the backlash could ignite the whole section. He felt the weight of it, not just the tech but the team. Humans had crossed voids greater than this, turned scraps into salvation. But here, in the belly of a forgotten relic, ingenuity felt like a fragile thread. As the first exchanger clicked into place, a distant rumble shook the floor. Alarms blared anew, sharper this time. Elena's comms crackled to life, faint, garbled. Myra's voice? Or Tomas? Jax paused, heart pounding as the readout spiked. The core was fighting back and their borrowed time was running dry. Elena gripped the railing as the shuttle shuddered through the asteroid's shadow adow. The dim glow from the emergency panels cast long shadows across the cabin, turning Jax's face into a mask of flickering orange. He hunched over the console, fingers dancing across the patched-together controls, muttering curses under his breath. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he said, his voice a low rumble that cut through the hum of straining engines. Mira sat strapped in beside her, eyes fixed on the scanner readout, her knuckles white against the armrest. The cautious one, always calculating odds, but now even she looked frayed at the edges. The plan had been simple enough after the last glitch. Skirt the debris field, dock with the derelict station's outer ring, and reroute power from its auxiliary core to light up the chamber below. Earth's signal had flickered out hours ago, leaving them blind to any backup from home. No more directives, no resupply, just the three of them against the void. But as the shuttle nosed toward the docking port, alarms blared. A micrometeorite swarm, invisible until too late, had peppered the hull. Jax yanked the yoke, veering hard, but the impact rattled through the frame like a drumbeat. "Shields at 30%, Mira announced, her tone clipped, betraying the fear she tried to bury. "We can't take another hit like that." Elena unstrapped, moving to the viewport despite the turbulence. Outside, the station loomed, a skeletal wheel against the starfield, its chamber at the hub swallowed in unnatural black. The darkness wasn't just absence of light, it pulsed as if alive, devouring the probes they'd sent earlier. Whatever had dimmed Earth's beacon had started here, a cascade failure rippling outward. They needed that core's energy to jury-rig a transmitter, to warn the colonies before the shadow spread. Jax killed the thrust, letting momentum carry them in. Docking clamps engaging. "Hold tight." The shuttle lurched, metal grinding on metal, and for a moment, silence fell. Then, a hiss, airlock sealing. Elena slapped the release, her pulse steady despite the adrenaline. Brave wasn't fearlessness, it was pushing forward when retreat meant losing everything. They cycled through into the station's corridor, flashlights cutting beams through dust motes. The air recyclers hummed faintly, a ghost of functionality, but the walls bore scars, scorch marks from energy discharges, panels pried open like wounds. Jax led, his toolkit slung over one shoulder, cracking a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "If this core's as fried as the logs say, we're improvising." Again. Mira trailed, scanner in hand. "Radiation levels nominal, but the chamber's interference is spiking. We get in, grab the conduit lines, and get out. No heroics." The corridor narrowed, forcing them single file past twisted bulkheads. Elena's boot caught on a loose grate, and she stumbled, catching herself on Jax's arm. He steadied her without a word, but the touch lingered, a reminder of the camaraderie that had kept them sane through the endless shifts. Earth's light dimming wasn't just comms failure, it was a wound to their home, and they were the stitches. At the access hatch to the core room, the darkness thickened, pressing against their lights like ink. Jax pried it open with a crowbar, the screech echoing. Inside, the auxiliary core squatted in the gloom, a cylindrical beast of conduits and capacitors, half its casing melted. Sparks danced from exposed wires, illuminating the damage. A sabotage scar, deliberate and deep. "Someone did this," Elena said, kneeling to trace the cuts. "Not a failure, an act." The stakes twisted sharper. This wasn't cosmic bad luck, but an enemy in the black. Myra's scanner beeped urgently. Interference just jumped. "Something's waking up down there." Jax connected the first bypass, his hands steady. "One more line and we're golden." But as power surged, the core groaned, lights flickering to life, then dying in a cascade. Alarms wailed, and from the chamber below, a low thrum rose, vibrating through the deck. Their plan backfired. The surge had stirred whatever lurked in the dark. Elena pulled her sidearm, the weight familiar. "We adapt. Seal the hatch behind us and head down. Earth's counting on us, even if they don't know it yet." They moved as one, descending into the pulsing void, the thrum growing to a roar that drowned their footsteps. The chamber waited, its secrets clawing toward the light they carried. The dim hum of the auxiliary lights cast long shadows across the engineering bay, where Marco wiped sweat from his brow and stared at the flickering console. His fingers danced over the controls, rerouting what little power remained from the non-essential systems. "Come on, you stubborn beast," he muttered, his voice a mix of frustration and that irrepressible grin he wore even in the worst scrapes. The chamber's core, once a pulsing heart of fusion energy, now sputtered like a candle in the wind, its containment field weakening by the minute. Elena burst through the hatch, her boots clanging against the grated floor. She was all sharp edges and unyielding resolve, her flight suit torn at the sleeve from the earlier breach. Status, Marco? Lila's got the outer sensors picking up anomalies, something's interfering with the solar sails. Her eyes scanned the readouts, locking onto the critical warning, containment at 47%. If it dropped below 30, the whole module would vent into the void, and with Earth's grid blacked out below, there'd be no rescue beam to catch them. Marco leaned back, rubbing his stubbled chin. Plan A's toast. The bypass I rigged? It held for about 5 minutes before the feedback loop fried the relays. We're bleeding energy faster than a punctured hull. He gestured to the schematic hologram, where red lines spiderwebbed across the grid. The chamber had been their lifeline, an experimental habitat module testing deep space sustainability, but now it was a tomb in waiting. The external challenge wasn't just the failing core, it was the solar storm that had knocked out Earth's power net, leaving their sails useless and the module adrift in the belt's debris field. Lila followed close behind, her cautious steps measured, tablet clutched like a shield. She adjusted her glasses, peering at the data with a frown that deepened her thoughtful creases. The interference isn't natural. It's modulated, almost like a signal. If we don't isolate it, we'll lose the last of the NAV thrusters. Her voice carried that steady precision, the kind that grounded their wilder impulses, but even she couldn't hide the tremor in her hands. Elena nodded, her mind racing through contingencies. The team had launched with high hopes. Prove human grit could sustain off-world outposts amid Earth's growing energy crises. But the storm had hit without warning, dimming the planet's lights from orbit, and now their own light was fading. We adapt. Marco, can you jury-rig a manual shunt from the emergency batteries? Lila cross-referenced that signal with the debris logs. Maybe it's salvageable tech from the old mining rigs. Marco chuckled dryly, already prying open a panel with a toolkit. Sparks flew as he worked, the acrid smell of melting insulation filling the air. Manual shunt? In this soup? It'll buy us maybe an hour, but yeah, let's dance. His wit masked the ache in his shoulders, the knowledge that one wrong connection could end them all. He thought of Earth, its cities gone dark, families huddling in the cold. Their mission was bigger than survival now. It was a beacon if they could just keep the chamber alive. Lila tapped furiously at her tablet, her caution yielding to urgency. Got a match. It's a derelict probe broadcasting junk data. If we extend the manipulator arm, we could snag it, harvest its residual power cells. But as she spoke, the console beeped sharply. The core's field dipped to 42%, and a low groan echoed through the hull, like the station protesting its own demise. Elena's jaw tightened. The early plan to recharge via the sails had backfired spectacularly, the storm's electromagnetic pulse turning their advantage into a liability. Now, with the debris field closing in, collision risks mounting, they had to move fast. Suit up. We're going EVA. No more waiting for miracles. She grabbed her helmet, the weight of command settling heavier than the vacuum outside. As they sealed the airlock, Marco shot Lila a wink through his visor. Bet I snagged that probe first. Lila rolled her eyes, but a small smile cracked her reserve. Out there, tethered against the starless black, Earth's dimmed silhouette loomed, a reminder of the stakes. One slip, and the chamber would fall silent forever, their ingenuity just another echo in the void. But humans didn't quit. They improvised, grit forging paths where light had failed. The arm extended with a hydraulic whine, reaching into the dark as the first fragments of debris pinged off the hull like distant warnings. Captain Reyes gripped the console, her knuckles white against the flickering red lights. The bridge hummed with the strain of the engines, every vibration a reminder that the Aurora was pushing beyond its limits. Beside her, Dr. Elias hunched over his tablet, his cautious eyes darting between readouts. The containment field's at 47%, he said, voice steady but laced with the edge of worry he'd carried since they left the outer colonies. If we shunt power from life support again, we'll be breathing thin air in hours. Lena, the witty mechanic with grease-streaked arms and a perpetual smirk, snorted from the engineering feed on the main screen. Thin air's better than the void, Doc. I've got the relays rerouted, barely. But that alien tech we scavenged? It's fighting us every step. Like it knows we're trying to jury-rig it to punch through the dark zone around Earth. The chamber, the heart of the old Earth relay station, had fallen silent months ago, its light dimming as some cosmic anomaly swallowed the planet's signals. No warnings, no pleas, just darkness. Reyes and her crew, the last responders from the fringe worlds, had pieced together a desperate plan. Use the Aurora's modified drive to breach the anomaly, deploy the counterpulse Elias had theorized, and reignite the chamber from afar. But the alien artifact they'd integrated, a crystalline core from a derelict scout ship, was no passive tool. It pulsed with its own rhythm, resisting their human ingenuity like a living thing. Reyes nodded, her brave resolve a quiet fire that had kept them going through the fuel shortages and ghost readings. We adapt or we die out here. Elias, run the sims again. Lena, talk to me, can we isolate the interference without losing the boost? Lena's face filled the screen, her quick grin flashing amid the sparks from her station. Isolate? Sure, if I had a weak and a spare fusion core. But here's the kicker, that crystal's sinking with the anomaly's edge. It's not just resisting, it's learning. Last cycle it flipped our power flow, nearly fried the NAV systems. If we force it now we might get the jump, but it could drag us straight into the heart of the dark. Tension coiled in the air, thicker than the recycled oxygen. Outside the viewport, the stars blurred into streaks, the anomaly's fringe a swirling maw of shadow that hid Earth like a shroud. They'd lost contact with the rival salvage team weeks back. Those opportunistic Krell hunters who'd tailed them from the rings of Saturn. No bodies, no wreckage, just static. Reyes wondered if the anomaly had claimed them first, or if something worse lurked within. Elias straightened, pushing his glasses up with a finger smudged from endless calculations. The sims show a 62% chance of success if we pulse in stages. But if the crystal backlashes... He trailed off, the risk hanging unspoken, the Aurora torn apart, their gambit ending in silent drift, Earth forever dimmed. Reyes met their eyes across the feeds. We've come too far to fold. Lena, prep the overrides. Elias, monitor the field. We hit it in 3. Her voice cut sharp, action propelling them forward, but doubt flickered in her chest like a failing bulb. The camaraderie had held them through the resource droughts, the endless watches, but this was the precipice. As the countdown ticked, the crystal in the core chamber glowed brighter, its facets catching the emergency lights in jagged patterns. Lena's hands flew over controls, witty quips silenced by focus. Then, without warning, the ship lurched. Alarms blared, containment breach. The crystal surged, not in resistance but amplification, pulling the Aurora faster into the fringe. Power surged wildly, lights strobing as systems overloaded. Pull back. Elias shouted, but it was too late. The viewport filled with the anomaly's roil, tendrils of darkness lashing out like probing fingers. Reyes braced, heart pounding. Their early plan to ease and had backfired spectacularly. The crystal wasn't just learning, it was inviting them deeper into the chamber's true heart, where Earth's light had fallen. Lena's voice crackled through static. Captain, it's adapting to us. We're not breaching, we're being pulled. And something's waiting on the other side. The stakes sharpened, the cost now their very survival, as the ship hurtled toward whatever guarded the dimmed world. The dim glow of the emergency strips flickered along the corridor walls, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the grated floor. Elena gripped the makeshift pry bar tighter, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from heat but from the gnawing certainty that every second they wasted here meant another layer of the chamber's defenses sealing them in deeper. Beside her, Marcus crouched low, his breath steady despite the chaos they'd left behind, the ruptured hull sections venting atmosphere into the void, the alien ship's core pulsing erratically like a wounded heart. We can't keep punching through bulkheads like this, Marcus muttered, his voice a low rumble as he scanned the access panel with the salvage scanner. His fingers, calloused from years of zero-G repairs, flew over the interface, coaxing data from the fractured alien code. He was the steady one, the engineer who saw patterns where others saw madness, but even he couldn't hide the strain-etching lines around his eyes. This ship's AI is adapting. Next breach might trigger a full lockdown. Elena nodded, her dark hair matted against her scalp under the helmet's seal. Brave didn't mean fearless. It meant pushing through the fear that clawed at her gut, the same fear that had claimed half their survey team when the chamber first dimmed. Earth's light, faint signals from home, the steady hum of human ingenuity, had been their anchor. Now, with the comms array fried and the rival Krell faction closing in from the outer rings, it felt like the stars themselves were turning away. Then we adapt faster. Jack said the core's auxiliary controls are just beyond this hatch. If we reroute power manually, we can override the blackout sequence. Jax, trailing a step behind, hefted the plasma cutter with a grunt. The wiry medic was all sharp wit and quicker reflexes, his humor a shield against the void's indifference. But his usual quips had dried up since losing Riley to the initial surge. Manual reroute? With what? Our bare hands and good intentions. These Krell designed this beast to fry organics like us. He sliced into the hatch's locking mechanism, sparks flying in brilliant arcs that illuminated the etched warnings on the walls, symbols that no translator could fully decipher, hinting at ancient cataclysms the aliens had buried deep. The cutter whined, then bit through with a hiss, the hatch groaning open on protesting hinges. A rush of stale air hit them, carrying the metallic tang of overheating circuits. Elena led the way, her boots magnetizing to the deck with a soft thud. The chamber ahead was a cavern of conduits and glowing nodes, the heart of the ship's life support, now choked with emergency seals that pulsed like veins under stress. The external challenge had started as a resource shortage, the Krell's sabotage cutting fuel lines to force a surrender, but it had escalated into this, a cascading failure threatening to plunge the entire vessel into irreversible darkness, dooming them all to suffocation or worse, capture. As they advanced, a low vibration hummed through the floor, building to a tremor. Marcus froze, his scanner beeping urgently. Incoming. Krell patrol drone, it's vectoring right for us. He slammed a fist against a nearby console, pulling up a hasty schematic. The plan to slip through the vents had backfired earlier, alerting the ship's defenses and stranding them in this labyrinth. Now, with the drone sensors sweeping the corridors, their window was slamming shut. Elena's mind raced, piecing together fragments from the logs they'd scavenged. Human grit wasn't about brute force. It was the spark of improvisation, the refusal to yield. The conduits reroute the drone's path through them. Overload it with the auxiliary surge. She pointed to a junction box, its panels scarred from prior blasts. Jack barked a laugh, short and bitter. You're insane. That could light us up like a flare. But he was already moving, cutter in hand, slicing into the box while Marcus jury-rigged the controls. Elena stood guard, pry bar raised, heart pounding as the drone's whine grew louder, a mechanical predator closing in. Sparks erupted from the junction as Jax connected the lines, his hands steady despite the risk. The tremor peaked, the drone bursting into view at the corridor's end, a sleek orb bristling with sensors and barbs. Marcus hit the override, and the conduits lit up, a cascade of raw energy arcing toward the intruder. The drone shuddered, its hull glowing white-hot before it detonated in a muffled bloom of fire and shrapnel, the blast wave rattling their suits. Silence fell, broken only by their ragged breaths. The chamber's nodes flickered brighter for a moment, the blackout sequence stuttering. But as Elena lowered her bar, a new alert pierced the air. The Krell's main force had breached the outer locks. Their clever adaptation had bought time, but the cost lingered, the ship's core now unstable, venting precious oxygen into the black. They pressed on, the weight of Earth's dimmed light heavier than ever on their shoulders. The dim hum of the auxiliary generators echoed through the corridors like a dying heartbeat, each pulse a reminder that the station's life support was fraying at the edges. Elena gripped the toolkit tighter, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal handle, as she followed Jax into the access shaft leading to the core chamber. The air grew thicker here, laced with the acrid tang of overheating circuits, and she could feel the sweat beading on her forehead despite the dropping temperature. Jax, ever the cautious one, paused at the hatch, his flashlight beam cutting through the gloom like a knife. "This is it," he muttered, voice low and steady. "One wrong move and we're ventilating the whole deck." Behind them, Mira scanned the readouts on her portable console, her fingers dancing across the cracked screen. She was the witty core of their trio, the one who could crack a joke even as the oxygen levels dipped, but now her eyes were sharp, focused. Readings show the breach is widening, plasma leaks from the outer hull. If we don't seal it manually, the cascade failure hits the bridge in 10 minutes. No banter this time. The stakes had stripped away the levity. Elena nodded, pushing down the knot of fear in her gut. They'd come this far on grid alone, humans against the void, piecing together a fix from scavenged parts and sheer stubborn will, after the alien artifact's pulse had dimmed Earth's signal, leaving their outpost adrift. Jax wrenched the hatch open with a grunt, the hinges protesting in a shower of sparks. The chamber beyond was a nightmare of tangled conduits and flickering emergency lights, the central reactor core pulsing erratically, its blue glow casting long shadows that danced like specters. Elena's breath caught as she stepped inside, the floor vibrating under her boots from the strain. "Remember the plan," Jax said, clipping his harness to the railing. "I stabilize the flow regulators. You two reroute the power grid. No heroics." But even as he spoke, a low groan rippled through the structure, and a section of the ceiling buckled, raining debris that forced Mira to dive aside. She scrambled up, coughing, her console sparking in her hand. "Jax, wait. The schematics are off. That pulse from the artifact must have rewritten the failsafes. We can't just reroute, it'll overload the secondary lines." Elena's mind raced, the image of the chamber's heart, a throbbing mass of conduits glowing faintly, burning into her vision. They jury-rigged so much already, from the initial blackout when Earth's light had faded from their scopes, stranding them without resupply. But this was the tipping point. Jax hesitated, his brave facade cracking for a split second, sweat tracing lines down his face. "Then we improvise. Elena, hand me the bypass coil. Mira, talk me through it." The groan intensified, metal screeching as another stress fracture spiderwebbed across the wall. Elena tossed the coil, her throw precise despite the tremor in her arms, and dropped to her knees beside Mira. Together, they pried open a panel, fingers fumbling with insulated wires that hummed with residual energy. Sparks flew, singeing Elena's glove, but she pressed on, twisting connections with a makeshift clamp fashioned from a broken strut. Myra's voice cut through the chaos, urgent but clear: "Link the tertiary feed to the auxiliary, bypass the corrupted node. It'll hold for a surge, but not forever." Jax worked above them, his silhouette etched against the core's light, muscles straining as he wedged the coil into place. A sudden jolt rocked the chamber, the station listing as if punched by an invisible fist. Alarms blared, red lights strobing, and Elena's harness yanked taut, saving her from sliding into a gaping vent. "It's the hull breach expanding," Mira shouted, her wit forgotten in the raw edge of survival. Jax cursed, nearly losing his grip, but he locked the coil with a final twist. Power surged, the core flaring brighter for a heartbeat, then stabilizing in fits and starts. Elena felt a fragile hope flicker. Human hands, human resolve, holding back the dark just a little longer. But as the immediate crisis ebbed, a new readout blinked on Myra's console. Comms flickering back online, faint signals from Earth piercing the void. Not salvation, but a whisper, a distress beacon of their own making, carrying data on the artifact's pulse. Jax slumped against the railing, breathing hard. "We bought time. But the cost." He trailed off, glancing at the scorched panels, the weakened structure. Elena met his eyes, the weight of it settling in. Their outpost was limping, resources thinner than ever, and the darkness that had claimed Earth's light loomed larger, waiting for the next failure. Yet in that shared glance, amid the settling dust, there was a spark of something unbreakable, their camaraderie forged in the chamber's depths, ready for whatever came next. Elera's hands trembled as she sealed the final panel, the faint hum of the auxiliary core vibrating through her gloves. The chamber's walls, once a seamless glow of Earth's relayed starlight, now flickered with erratic shadows, but the darkness was receding. Inch by inch, the adaptive filter she jury-rigged from salvaged drone parts pushed back the void, channeling the dimmed signals from the homeworld into a stable pulse. Jax knelt beside her, his breath ragged from the sprint through the collapsing corridors. "That the last one?" His voice was gravel, laced with the exhaustion of hours spent hauling conduits while the rival faction's sabotage bots swarmed like angry hornets. She nodded, wiping sweat from her brow. The air recyclers wheezed, pulling in the stale tang of scorched wiring and ozone. If it holds. The core's at 23%, enough to light the path out, but we'll need every scrap of power for the evac shuttle. Mira, ever the cautious one, scanned the readouts on her cracked tablet. Her fingers danced over the interface, double-checking the overrides. Incoming signatures, 3 hostiles closing fast. They must have breached the outer locks. She glanced up, her eyes sharp behind the visor. We can't fight them off now. Not with the structure failing. Jax hefted his makeshift pulse rifle, cobbled from mining lasers and a power cell. Then we don't fight. We run. He shot Alara a grin wry and defiant. Your brainiac fix bought us time. Let's not waste it. The ground shuddered again, a deep groan echoing from the chamber's depths as another stress fracture spiderwebbed across the floor. Dust sifted down like ash from a dying fire, and in the half-light, Ilara caught a glimpse of the stars beyond the viewport, Earth's light, faint but unyielding, piercing the blackout the rivals had engineered to claim the outpost for themselves. They moved as one, a tight unit forged in the crucible of the last 3 cycles. Ilara led, her steps measured, guiding them through the labyrinth of conduits she'd mapped in her mind. Jax covered the rear, his shots precise bursts that deterred the pursuing drones without wasting energy. Mira flanked, her warnings clipped and urgent. Left at the junction, vents are clear for 20 meters. A drone buzzed into view, its red sensor eye glaring. Jax fired, the bolt shearing its wing. It spiraled into the wall with a metallic screech, but more followed, a relentless hum building behind them. The air grew thicker, laced with the acrid bite of failing seals. Ilara's heart pounded, each beat a reminder of the cost. The outpost's crew half lost to the initial blackout, their voices silenced in the calm static. Shuttle bays ahead, Mira said, her voice steady despite the strain. But the hatch is jammed, sabotage residue. Ilara didn't hesitate. She dropped to her knees, prying open an access grate with a tool scavenged from her belt. Boost me up. I can reroute the emergency power. Jax laced his fingers, launching her toward the ceiling panel. Her arms burned as she wrenched the cover free, fingers slick with grime. Wires sparked in the dimness, a chaotic nest, but she traced the pattern, human ingenuity at its rawest, turning chaos into a lifeline. Below, Jax and Mira held the line. A drone clipped Jax's shoulder, drawing a hiss of pain, but he smashed it against the bulkhead. Hurry! Mira called, her tablet beeping warnings of structural collapse. The panel clicked into place. Lights flared along the corridor, the hatch grinding open with a reluctant whine. They piled into the shuttle, Ilara slamming the controls as the engines coughed to life. The rivals' shouts echoed faintly through the closing doors, too late. As the shuttle rocketed free, the chamber receded, its lights winking out one by one. Earth hung in the void, its glow subdued but present, a beacon reclaimed through grit and clever hands. Jax slumped into a seat, clutching his injured arm. We made it. But the outpost, it's gone. Mira nodded, her face etched with quiet resolve. And they'll come for the next one. But we know their tricks now. Ilara stared out at the stars, the weight of survival settling like a familiar shadow. The darkness had fallen, but humanity's light, dimmed, never extinguished, would guide them onward.